I was lying on the bathroom floor, unable to breathe, watching my bedroom door where my parents had stood 5 minutes ago. My twin brother, Derek, had convinced them I was faking another anxiety attack for attention. The tile felt cold against my cheek. My vision tunneled. I couldn't call for help. My lungs burned. And through the door, I could hear my mother laughing at something Derek said in the kitchen downstairs. That was when everything went black. The first thing I heard was voices. Urgent, professional voices that didn't belong to anyone in my family. Someone was saying my name over and over. Benson. Benson. Can you hear me? My eyes opened to the interior of an ambulance. Bright lights. Medical equipment everywhere. An oxygen mask covered my face, and I gasped, pulling air into my lungs like a drowning man breaking the surface. The relief was overwhelming, but so was the confusion and terror. Easy, easy, a paramedic said, placing a hand on my shoulder. She was maybe 30, with kind eyes. You're okay now. Just breathe normally. We've got you. What happened? I managed to say, my voice muffled by the mask. Your neighbor heard crashing from your bathroom and called 911, found you unconscious on the floor. You weren't breathing when we arrived. We've been administering oxygen for about 3 minutes now. How do you feel? I tried to process this, not breathing. How long had I been out? How long was I without oxygen? I asked. The paramedic exchanged a glance with her partner. Based on your neighbor's timeline, approximately 5 minutes, maybe a little more. We need to get you to the hospital immediately. There's a risk of brain damage from oxygen deprivation. 5 minutes. I had been dying on that bathroom floor for 5 minutes, while my parents ate dinner and laughed with Derek downstairs. The emergency room was chaos. Bright lights, people rushing everywhere, machines beeping. They wheeled me into a bay and immediately started running tests. Blood pressure, heart rate, oxygen levels. A doctor appeared, young and focused, asking me questions rapid fire. Do you have any known allergies? Any history of breathing problems? Asthma? Have you experienced anything like this before? I have a peanut allergy, I said. Severe. I told my parents I felt strange after dinner tonight. My throat felt tight, but they said I was fine. The doctor's expression changed. Your throat felt tight? When did you eat? Maybe 2 hours before this happened. She examined my throat, shining a light down. You had an anaphylactic reaction. Your throat closed completely. This is textbook anaphylaxis. Did you have your EpiPen? I don't have one. My parents never got me one. They said my allergy wasn't that serious. The doctor stared at me for a long moment. You're 26 years old and you have a severe peanut allergy, and nobody ever got you an EpiPen? Before I could answer, I heard my mother's voice in the hallway. Where is he? Where's Benson? My parents rushed into the bay, and Derek was right behind them. My mother looked annoyed more than concerned. My father had his arms crossed, his face set in that familiar expression of disappointment. This is so embarrassing, Benson, my mother said, not even asking how I was. The neighbors called us, frantic. Said you were taken away in an ambulance. What were you thinking? I wasn't breathing, Mom. I almost died. Oh, don't be so dramatic, my father said. You're fine. You're always fine. This is just another one of your episodes. Derek stood behind them, playing the role of concerned brother perfectly. His face showed worry, but his eyes were cold. I'm just glad you're okay, Benson. You really scared everyone. The doctor interrupted. Excuse me, but your son had a severe allergic reaction. He stopped breathing. This was a life-threatening medical emergency. He has anxiety, my mother explained to the doctor, as if I wasn't there. He gets worked up and thinks something's wrong when there's nothing actually wrong. We've been dealing with this for years. Ma'am, with respect, your son's throat closed due to an allergic reaction. This wasn't anxiety. This was anaphylaxis. If the paramedics had arrived a few minutes later, he would have died. My parents looked unmoved. Derek stepped forward, lowering his voice conspiratorially. Doctor, I don't know if Benson mentioned this, but he has a history of these dramatic episodes. Panic attacks, exaggerating symptoms. He's done this since we were kids. Our parents have taken him to countless doctors. It's always been anxiety. I watched Derek work his magic, He was so convincing, so earnest. The doctor's expression shifted slightly. Less certain now. That may be, she said carefully, but the medical evidence shows a clear anaphylactic reaction. We found elevated tryptase levels in his blood, which confirms anaphylaxis. His throat shows significant swelling. This was real. My father waved his hand dismissively. Of course it was real. Nobody's saying he didn't have some kind of reaction. But Benson tends to make things worse than they are. Gets himself worked up. We told him to calm down before dinner, but he wouldn't listen. I couldn't believe what I was hearing. I had told them I felt sick. I had asked for help. Derek had said I was fine, and they had believed him. The doctor excused herself, and my family stood around my bed in uncomfortable silence. Derek caught my eye and smiled slightly. It wasn't a warm smile. It was victorious. After about an hour of additional tests and observation, a different doctor came to see me. She was younger than the first, maybe early 30s, with sharp eyes that seemed to see everything. Her name tag read, Dr. Sarah Brennan, resident. "Benson, could I speak with you privately for a moment?" she asked. My parents started to protest, but Dr. Brennan held up a hand. "He's an adult. He has the right to speak with his doctor privately." Once my family left the bay, Dr. Brennan pulled a chair close to my bed and sat down. She had a tablet in her hands, and she was scrolling through something. "I pulled your medical records," she said quietly. "All of them, from every hospital and clinic in the system. Benson, do you know how many times you've been in the emergency room in the past 8 years?" I shook my head. 17 times. 17 separate visits. Broken bones, infections, severe reactions like tonight. And in almost every case, there was a significant delay between the injury or illness and when you received treatment, sometimes days. In your records, there are notes from other doctors expressing concern about delayed care. My throat tightened. Not from allergies this time, but from the validation of finally being seen. "Nobody ever said anything," I whispered, "because you were with your parents. You were a minor for most of these visits. And even as an adult, when family says someone is prone to exaggeration, medical professionals sometimes don't dig deeper. But I did. And Benson, this pattern looks like medical neglect." The words hung in the air between us. Medical neglect. Someone was finally saying it out loud. "Is someone hurting you?" she asked gently. I thought about how to answer that. Derek wasn't hitting me. My parents weren't physically abusive. But the years of dismissal, of being told I was dramatic and attention-seeking, of having my pain ignored while Derek was believed about everything, that hurt in ways I couldn't fully explain. "It's complicated," I said. "It always is," Dr. Brennan replied. "But Benson, I'm required to file a report with Adult Protective Services. The pattern in your medical history, combined with what happened tonight, meets the criteria for a mandatory report. I want you to know that I'm going to do that." For the first time in my life, someone was taking my side. Someone was seeing through Derek's perfect act and my parents' dismissive explanations. I felt hope bloom in my chest, fragile and terrifying. "What happens next?" I asked. "APS will investigate. They'll interview you, your family. They'll review the medical records. It's not going to be easy, Benson, but you deserve to be safe." When Dr. Brennan left to file her report, I sat alone in the emergency bay, trying to process everything. Through the curtain, I could hear Derek talking to a nurse, his voice full of brotherly concern. I wondered if he knew what was coming. I wondered if he would find a way to turn this against me too. When my family returned, Derek looked at me across the room, and something in his expression had changed. His smile was still there, but it was colder now. He knew something had shifted. And the look in his eyes told me one clear thing. This was far from over. 3 days after the hospital incident, a woman from Child and Family Services knocked on my parents' front door. Her name was Patricia Goodwin, and she carried a leather portfolio and wore an expression of professional neutrality. I was still staying with my parents because I had nowhere else to go. My retail job barely covered my car payment and phone bill, let alone rent. Patricia explained that she was investigating a report of possible neglect. My mother's face went tight, but she invited Patricia inside with forced politeness. My father immediately called their lawyer, but Patricia said this was just an initial interview. Nothing formal yet. She asked to speak with each of us separately. I went first, sitting across from Patricia at the dining room table while my family waited in different rooms. Benson, I want you to tell me, in your own words, what happened 3 nights ago, Patricia said, pen poised over her notepad. So I told her. I explained how I'd felt strange after dinner, how my throat had started to close, how I'd told my parents something was wrong. I described how Derek had said I was just anxious, how my parents had believed him and gone back downstairs, how I'd collapsed in the bathroom, unable to breathe, unable to call for help. Patricia wrote everything down, her expression unreadable. Then I told her about the other times. The broken arm when I was 14 that my parents didn't take me to get checked for 3 days because Derek said I was being dramatic about a bruise. It had been fractured in 2 places. The pneumonia when I was 19 that I'd begged to see a doctor about, but my parents had refused until a neighbor noticed how sick I was and insisted on driving me to urgent care herself. The car accident when I was 22 where the other driver had run a red light and hit me, but my parents had somehow decided it was my fault and refused to help with medical bills. Has this pattern always involved your brother Derek? Patricia asked. Always. Derek says I'm fine, and they believe him. Derek says I'm exaggerating, and they believe him. It doesn't matter what I say. It's always Derek's word against mine, and he always wins. Patricia nodded slowly, making notes. And the peanut allergy? You told the hospital staff that you've never had an EpiPen despite having a severe allergy. My parents said I didn't need one. Derek doesn't have any allergies, so they didn't think mine was that serious. More notes. More nodding. Patricia's face remained professionally neutral, but I thought I saw a flicker of something in her eyes. Sympathy, maybe, or concern. After my interview, Patricia spoke with my parents. I could hear my mother's voice rising and falling from the living room, explaining what a difficult child I'd been. How I'd always needed more attention than Derek. How I'd always complained about something. My father's voice was calmer but equally firm, backing up everything my mother said. Then it was Derek's turn. I sat in my room, staring at the ceiling, trying not to imagine what Derek was saying. But I knew him. I knew exactly how he'd play this. He'd be concerned, articulate, the perfect brother who'd tried so hard to help his troubled twin. After about 45 minutes, Patricia knocked on my bedroom door. Benson, can I ask you a few follow-up questions? I let her in, and she sat on the edge of my desk chair, looking at me with an expression I couldn't quite read. Derek showed me something I'd like you to explain, she said carefully. She pulled out her phone and showed me a series of screenshots. They were from my social media, posts from months ago where I joked about calling in sick to work when I wasn't really sick. Stupid jokes, the kind everyone makes. Derek suggested these posts show a pattern of exaggerating or faking illness, Patricia said. My stomach dropped. Those were jokes. Everyone makes jokes like that. I understand. But Derek also showed me text messages between the 2 of you where you apparently admitted to exaggerating symptoms to get attention. What? That never happened. Can I see them? Patricia showed me her phone again. The texts looked like they were from my number, but I didn't remember sending them. The messages said things like, I know I overreacted yesterday, and, you're right, I was being dramatic. I don't remember these, I said, feeling panic rising in my chest. Some of these are taken out of context. That one about overreacting, that was about a movie, not about being sick. But even as I said it, I could see how it looked. Derek had been collecting evidence, twisting my words, building a case against me. Patricia's expression had shifted. She looked less sympathetic now, more skeptical. Derek also showed me journal entries where he's expressed concern about you for years. He's documented conversations where he tried to help you, times when he covered for you with your parents. He seems very worried about you, Benson. Journal entries. Derek kept a journal? Or had he created one just for this purpose? He's lying, I said, but my voice sounded weak even to my own ears. He's manipulating you. This is what he does. Patricia stood, closing her portfolio. I'm going to complete my investigation and file a report. But Benson, I have to be honest with you. The evidence suggests that you may be experiencing some mental health challenges that are causing you to misinterpret your family's actions. I'm going to recommend that you seek therapy. I'm also going to recommend family counseling for all of you. What about the medical records? Dr. Brennan found a pattern of neglect. Medical records show that you received treatment for your injuries and illnesses. Perhaps not as quickly as ideal, but families sometimes struggle to identify serious symptoms, especially with someone who has a history of anxiety. That's not the same as neglect. She left, and I sat on my bed, feeling the world collapse around me. Derek had won. He'd turned the entire investigation against me, made me look like the problem. That night, after Patricia had gone and my parents had retreated to their bedroom, Derek came to my room. He didn't knock, just walked in and closed the door behind him. "Did you really think anyone would believe you over me?" he asked, his voice casual. "I've been planning for this my whole life, Benson. Every text message, every social media post, every conversation. I've been building a narrative. You're the troubled twin, the dramatic one, the one who needs attention. And I'm the good son, the concerned brother who's tried so hard to help." I stared at him, finally seeing him clearly. This wasn't neglect by my parents. This was orchestrated, deliberate. Derek had been systematically destroying my credibility for years. "Why?" I whispered. Derek smiled, and it was the coldest thing I'd ever seen. "Because there's only room for one golden child in this family, and it was never going to be you." He left, and I sat in the darkness of my room, understanding for the first time just how dangerous my brother really was. This wasn't sibling rivalry. This was something far worse. And I had no idea how to fight someone who'd been planning my destruction since childhood. 2 weeks after Patricia closed her investigation, everything seemed to return to normal. Except it wasn't normal at all. Derek watched me constantly now, a small smile playing on his lips whenever our parents praised him or dismissed something I said. He'd won the first battle, and he wanted me to know it. Then Dr. Brennan called me. "Benson, I need you to come to the hospital," she said. "I have something important to show you." I met her in a small conference room at the hospital. She had stacks of papers spread across the table, all of them medical records. She'd brought in another doctor, an older man named Dr. Marcus Fitzgerald, who specialized in medical neglect cases. "We've compiled your complete medical history," Dr. Brennan explained. "Every visit, every treatment, every delay. Dr. Fitzgerald has reviewed everything." Dr. Fitzgerald leaned forward, his expression serious. "Benson, the pattern is undeniable. 17 separate incidents over 8 years where you experienced significant delays in treatment. Broken bones, infections, allergic reactions. In each case, there was a gap between when you reported symptoms or injury and when you received medical care. That gap was consistently dangerous." He spread out a timeline he'd created, showing each incident marked with dates and treatment delays. It was damning. Clear evidence of systematic neglect. "This isn't about anxiety or exaggeration," Dr. Fitzgerald continued. "This is documentation of abuse through medical neglect. We're filing a formal complaint with the State Medical Board. We're also filing a second report with Adult Protective Services. And this time we're including all of this documentation. We're also contacting a lawyer who specializes in these cases." For the first time since this nightmare began, I felt hope. Medical evidence couldn't be manipulated the way words could. Numbers didn't lie. Treatment dates were facts. "What happens now?" I asked. "Now we wait for the system to work," Dr. Brennan said. "But Benson, you need to be prepared. Your family will fight this. They'll fight hard." She had no idea how right she was. 3 days later, a process server showed up at my job. The retail store where I worked as an assistant manager was busy with customers when a man approached the counter and asked if I was Benson. When I confirmed, he handed me a thick envelope. "You've been served," he said, and walked out. My hands shook as I opened the envelope. Inside were legal documents. My parents were suing me for defamation, for emotional distress. They were seeking $50,000 in damages, claiming that my false allegations had destroyed their reputation in the community. They'd also filed for a restraining order, claiming I was mentally unstable and had been making threatening statements. The lawsuit detailed every false accusation I'd supposedly made. It painted me as a troubled, vindictive son who'd turned on his loving family. It included statements from Derek, from extended family members, from family friends. Everyone saying the same thing. Benson is difficult. Benson seeks attention. Benson has always been troubled. The lawyer listed on the documents was Harold Sutton, one of the most expensive family law attorneys in the state. My parents couldn't afford him on their own, but I knew who could. My grandmother, my father's mother, had always favored Derek. She'd written me out of her will years ago. Apparently, she was now funding their legal attack. I couldn't afford a lawyer. I could barely afford rent. I called the only person I could think of. Dr. Brennan. My parents are suing me. She listened to everything, her silence heavy on the other end of the line. This is a common tactic in these cases, she finally said. They're trying to silence you, intimidate you. But Benson, you need legal representation. Let me make some calls. The restraining order hearing was scheduled for the following week. I showed up at the courthouse alone, while my parents arrived with Harold Sutton and Derek. The courtroom was small, and the judge was an older man with gray hair and a stern expression. Harold Sutton presented the case against me with devastating efficiency. Derek took the stand and described, with tears in his eyes, how worried he was about me, how I'd been acting erratically, how I'd made statements about getting back at our parents. All lies, but delivered so convincingly that even I almost believed him. My parents testified next, both of them playing the role of concerned parents perfectly. My mother cried on the stand, talking about how much they loved me, how they'd tried everything to help me. My father talked about how painful it was to watch his son self-destruct. When it was my turn to speak, I tried to present the medical evidence that Dr. Brennan and Dr. Fitzgerald had compiled, but the judge cut me off. This hearing is about whether you pose a threat to your family, not about past medical treatment, he said. Do you have any witnesses who can speak to your recent behavior? I didn't. Everyone in my life had been poisoned against me by Derek's years of manipulation. The judge granted the restraining order. I had to stay 500 feet away from my parents and Derek. I had 72 hours to remove my belongings from their house. I sat in my car outside the courthouse, trying to process what had just happened. The medical evidence didn't matter. The truth didn't matter. Derek had crafted a narrative so complete, so convincing, that the entire system believed him. My phone rang. It was my landlord. I was late on rent, and if I didn't pay within 3 days, I'd be evicted. I'd been so focused on the legal battle that I'd forgotten to pay. I didn't have the money. I'd already used my savings on court filing fees. I returned to my parents' house with a police escort to collect my belongings. I could only take what fit in 2 suitcases and a backpack. Derek watched from his bedroom window as I loaded my car, that same cold smile on his face. That night, I slept in my car in a 24-hour gym parking lot. I'd lost my apartment, I'd lost my family, and the legal battle was just beginning. 3 days later, I was fired from my job. My manager said I seemed distracted, and a customer had complained about my appearance. I was living in my car, showering at the gym. I hadn't slept more than a few hours in days. Of course, I looked rough. Without my job, I had no income. No way to pay for food or gas or the gym membership that let me shower. I was 26 years old, and I'd lost everything. One night, about a week after I'd been forced out of my parents' house, I was parked in the same gym lot when Derek's car pulled up next to mine. My heart raced. He was violating the restraining order just by being near me, but we both knew no one would believe that he'd sought me out. He rolled down his window. "How's the car treating you? Comfortable?" I didn't respond. "This is just the beginning, Benson. I'm going to take everything from you. Your reputation, your relationships, your future, and everyone will believe it's your own fault." He drove away, and I sat in the darkness, understanding the full scope of what I was facing. Derek didn't just want to win. He wanted to destroy me completely. 1 month after the restraining order, I was barely surviving. I'd lost 12 pounds because I could only afford 1 meal a day, usually from a dollar menu. I showered at rest stops when I could. My car was my bedroom, my office, My entire world. I'd applied for dozens of jobs but hadn't gotten any interviews. The arrest that never happened somehow showed up on background checks. Derek's work, I was sure. Then my phone rang. Unknown number. Benson? This is your Aunt Carol, your dad's sister. I hadn't heard from her since the restraining order. Most of the extended family had sided with my parents. I've been following everything that's happened, she said, her voice warm and sympathetic. I don't know all the details, but I know you're struggling. I have a basement apartment in my house. It's small, but it's yours if you want it. No rent. Just help out around the house when you can. I almost cried. After weeks of nobody believing me, nobody helping, here was family reaching out. Are you sure? I asked. Of course. Family takes care of family, Benson. Come by tomorrow. Aunt Carol's house was in a quiet neighborhood, about 20 miles from where my parents lived. The basement apartment was indeed small, just a bedroom, bathroom, and tiny kitchenette. But it felt like a palace after living in my car. She helped me carry my suitcases down, showed me where everything was, and gave me a set of keys. I want you to feel safe here, she said. Take your time getting back on your feet. For the first time in weeks, I felt hope. I had a roof over my head, a place to shower, a bed. I could start rebuilding. The first week was peaceful. Aunt Carol worked during the day, and I spent my time applying for jobs and trying to reorganize my life. She'd cook dinner some nights and invite me upstairs. We'd talk about neutral topics, carefully avoiding the family drama. But by the second week, things started to change. Benson, can we talk? Aunt Carol asked one evening. We sat in her living room, and her demeanor had shifted. She wasn't warm anymore. She looked disappointed. I've been thinking a lot about everything that's happened, she said. Your parents are good people. I've known them my whole life. And Derek, he's such a sweet boy. Always has been. Don't you think maybe you're being a little unfair to them? My stomach sank. Aunt Carol, there's medical evidence of neglect. Doctors have documented it. Doctors can be wrong. And sometimes when we're going through mental health struggles, we misinterpret things. Your mother told me you've always been anxious, always needed extra attention. Maybe this is all just a misunderstanding. It's not a misunderstanding. Derek has been manipulating everyone for years. She sighed. That's exactly what I'm talking about. You're so focused on blaming Derek for everything. Have you considered that maybe you need to take responsibility for your own actions? For how you've hurt your parents? Over the next few days, the suggestions became more pointed. She'd leave self-help books about accountability and forgiveness on the kitchen counter. She'd mention therapists who specialized in family reconciliation. She'd ask pointed questions about my plans to apologize to my parents. Then, 2 weeks after I'd moved in, I came back from a job interview to find her in my room. She was taking photos of my belongings with her phone. What are you doing? I asked. She jumped, startled. Oh, Benson. I was just checking to make sure everything was okay down here. But I could see she'd been going through my things. My laptop was open. Papers were moved. Were you looking through my stuff? Don't be paranoid, she said, brushing past me. That's exactly the kind of thinking that got you into this mess. That night, I couldn't sleep. I thought about the past 2 weeks, about how Aunt Carol's attitude had shifted, about the questions she'd asked, always about the lawsuit, always about what the doctors had said, always about my plans. And then I understood. Derek had sent her, or she'd volunteered. Either way, she was gathering information for their lawsuit. Everything I'd told her about the case, every document I'd left lying around, every word I'd said. It was all going back to Harold Sutton. I confronted her the next morning. Did Derek ask you to take me in? Her face tightened. What are you talking about? This whole thing. The basement apartment. The sympathy. You've been gathering information for the lawsuit, haven't you? You're being paranoid again, Benson. This is exactly what your family is worried about. I'm leaving. Fine. That's probably for the best. You clearly need professional help. I packed my suitcases, and as I was loading them into my car, her husband, Uncle Raymond, came home. He'd been on a business trip the entire time I'd been staying there. One look at his face told me he'd been drinking. "So you're the one causing all the trouble," he said, walking up to me. "I'm just leaving. You should have left a long time ago. You're tearing this family apart, you know that? Your parents are good people. Derek's a good kid. And you're acting like a spoiled brat." "I need to go," I said, trying to get into my car. Raymond grabbed my arm. Hard. "Look at me when I'm talking to you. Let go of me." He shoved me, and I stumbled backward, hitting the concrete driveway. Pain exploded through my shoulder where I landed. "Raymond, stop!" Carol shouted from the doorway, but she didn't move to help me. I got up, grabbed my suitcases, threw them in my car, and drove away as fast as I could. My shoulder throbbed. I could already feel it swelling. 20 minutes later, as I sat in a gas station parking lot trying to figure out where to go, a police car pulled up behind me. 2 officers approached. "Are you Benson?" one of them asked. "Yes. We need you to step out of the vehicle. We've received a report that you assaulted someone." They arrested me. Handcuffs. Rights read. The whole experience. Aunt Carol had called them and claimed I'd attacked Raymond. He'd backed up her story completely. Said I'd become violent when he tried to talk to me. I spent the night in county jail. The holding cell was cold, smelled like disinfectant and desperation. There were 4 other men in the cell, and I kept to myself, sitting on the bench with my back against the wall. One of the men, older with graying hair, noticed me. "First time?" I nodded. "What'd they get you for?" "Something I didn't do." He laughed, but not unkindly. "They all say that, but sometimes it's true." "What happened?" I don't know why I told him. Maybe because he was a stranger. Maybe because I was too exhausted to keep it in anymore. But I told him everything. Derek, my parents, the neglect, the manipulation, the lawsuit. How every time I tried to escape, Derek made things worse. The man listened to all of it, then said something that stuck with me. "You need evidence. Not the kind doctors have. The kind that shows what he's doing now. Record everything. Document everything. Get him on tape if you can. People like that, they always slip up. You just have to be ready when they do." In the morning, they released me. Raymond had decided not to press charges. Of course he hadn't. That had never been the point. The point was the arrest record. Another piece of evidence for Derek's narrative. Benson is unstable. Benson is violent. Look, even his own aunt called the police on him. I sat in my car outside the jail, homeless again, exhausted, my shoulder still aching. I checked my phone and found a text from Derek. "Heard about your arrest. So worried about you, brother. This is getting out of hand. Please get help." The text was perfect, concerned, caring. Exactly the kind of message a worried brother would send. And I knew Derek would screenshot it and save it. More evidence for the case he was building. I thought about what the man in jail had said. Get evidence. Record everything. Derek always planned ahead. But maybe, just maybe, I could catch him slipping. It was my only chance. 6 weeks after the arrest, I was living in my car again. But something had changed. I'd stopped running. I'd started documenting everything. Every text from Derek, every interaction with family members, every detail of every incident. I kept a journal hidden under my passenger seat, writing down dates, times, conversations. I'd also reached back out to Dr. Brennan. She'd been following the case, and she was concerned. We met at a coffee shop, her treating because I couldn't afford to buy anything. "I've been compiling more evidence," she said, spreading papers across the table between us. "I've gone back further in your medical history, found records from when you were a child. The pattern goes back to elementary school, Benson. There are notes from school nurses about injuries your parents didn't follow up on. Reports from teachers expressing concern. She showed me document after document. A broken finger at age 8 that wasn't treated for 5 days. A concussion at age 11 that no one took seriously. Chronic ear infections as a child that went untreated until I developed hearing problems. This is enough to reopen the investigation," Dr. Brennan said. "I have a colleague, a lawyer named Jennifer Walsh. She specializes in cases like yours, adult survivors of childhood neglect. She works pro bono for cases with strong evidence. Would you be willing to meet with her?" 2 days later, I sat in Jennifer Walsh's office. She was in her early 40s, sharp eyes, no-nonsense demeanor. She reviewed the medical records, the timeline Dr. Brennan had created, the documentation of the recent incidents. This is systematic psychological abuse, combined with medical neglect, she said. The pattern is clear. And what your brother has done, building false narratives, manipulating the legal system, that's abuse too. We can fight this. I don't have any money, I said. I know. That's why I take pro bono cases. But Benson, I need you to understand something. This is going to get worse before it gets better. Your family will fight back hard. Are you prepared for that? I thought about the past months. Losing my home, my job, sleeping in my car, being arrested for something I didn't do. How much worse could it get? I'm prepared, I said. Jennifer filed a countersuit against my parents for medical neglect and emotional abuse. She also filed a motion to dissolve the restraining order, arguing it was obtained through false statements. She submitted all the medical evidence, the timeline, everything. For the first time since this nightmare began, I had a real lawyer. Someone who believed me. Someone who was fighting for me. But Derek wasn't done. A week later, I'd found a quiet parking lot where I'd been spending nights. It was behind a closed shopping center, well lit, felt safe. I'd fallen asleep in the back seat, exhausted from another day of job hunting. I woke to the smell of gasoline. My eyes snapped open, and terror flooded through me. I could smell it everywhere, strong and chemical. I sat up and looked out the windows. Someone had poured gasoline around my car. I could see it glistening on the pavement in the streetlight. And then I saw him, Derek, standing about 20 feet away, holding a container of gasoline in one hand and a box of matches in the other. I scrambled out of the car, my heart pounding so hard I thought it might explode. Derek watched me with that same cold smile I'd seen so many times before. You should have stayed quiet, he said, his voice conversational. You should have just accepted your role. Derek, what are you doing? What I should have done years ago. He pulled out a match. You can't be serious. I'm completely serious. You're ruining everything, Benson. The lawsuit, the countersuit, bringing in that lawyer. You were supposed to just disappear. Live in your car, fade away. Maybe do something stupid on your own. But you keep fighting back. You keep making noise. So I have to finish this. My mind raced. If I ran, he could light the fire and my car would explode. If I tried to tackle him, he could drop the match. I was trapped. Why do you hate me so much? I asked, trying to keep him talking. I don't hate you. I just need you gone. Our parents only have so much attention to give. So much money, so much love, so much support, and they were splitting it between us. I needed all of it. So I made you the problem child. Made them focus on your issues while I became the perfect son. It worked. They put me through college. They're helping me buy a house. They've already changed their will to leave everything to me. But you keep existing, keep causing problems. Even now, you're messing it all up with this legal case. You put peanuts in my food, I said, the realization hitting me. That night, I couldn't breathe. You did that on purpose. Derek shrugged. I thought it might solve the problem permanently. 5 minutes is usually enough to cause brain damage. But you survived. You always survive, Benson. You're like a cockroach. You just keep going. He opened the matchbox. Please don't do this, I said. I don't have a choice anymore. He struck the match, and the flame flared bright in the darkness. I ran, just bolted, sprinting across the parking lot away from my car. Behind me, I heard Derek shout something, heard running footsteps. He was chasing me. Then I heard a voice. Hey, what's going on out there? A light turned on in one of the buildings. Someone had heard us. A security guard, maybe, or someone working late. Derek stopped running. I turned to see him standing in the middle of the parking lot, the match already burned out in his hand. He looked at me, and for the first time, I saw something other than cold confidence in his eyes. I saw fear. He dropped the matchbox and ran to his car, peeled out of the parking lot and disappeared into the night. The security guard came out, an older man with a flashlight. You okay? Someone just tried to set my car on fire. I gasped. pointing to the gasoline on the ground. The guard immediately called the police and fire department. Within 10 minutes, there were sirens and lights everywhere. Firefighters assessed the gasoline, made sure nothing was ignited. Police took my statement. "Do you know who did this?" An officer asked. "My brother, Derek." "Can you prove it?" I couldn't. It was dark, and while I'd seen him clearly, I didn't have photos or video. It would be my word against his again. But then the officer said something that changed everything. "We'll check security footage. This parking lot has cameras." He pointed, and I saw them. 3 cameras mounted on the building, covering the entire lot. The police retrieved the footage, and there it was. Crystal clear video of Derek pouring gasoline around my car. Derek holding the matches. Derek lighting one. Derek running when the guard came out. His face was clearly visible. His license plate caught on camera. Irrefutable proof. They arrested him at my parents' house that night. I wasn't there, but I heard about it later. Derek had tried to claim it was a misunderstanding, that he was trying to help me because my car had a gas leak. But the video showed everything. The deliberate pouring of gasoline, the lit match, the intent to harm. He was charged with attempted murder. For the first time in my entire life, there was evidence that even Derek couldn't manipulate or explain away. The police had him on video. He couldn't twist this, couldn't charm his way out of it, couldn't make me look like the crazy one. That night, I sat in a hotel room that Jennifer Walsh had paid for, my hands still shaking. My phone rang. It was Dr. Brennan. "I heard what happened. Are you okay?" "I'm alive." "Benson, this changes everything. The video evidence, the attempted murder charge. This proves the pattern. This proves he's dangerous. This proves you were telling the truth all along." She was right. But I also knew that Derek's arrest was just the beginning. My parents would bail him out. Harold Sutton would build a defense. The family would close ranks. This fight was far from over. But for the first time, I had proof. Real, undeniable proof that I wasn't crazy, wasn't dramatic, wasn't making it all up. Derek had finally slipped, and I'd been ready. Derek was released on bail 3 days later. My grandmother had paid it, $100,000, without hesitation. Harold Sutton immediately began building a defense strategy. The story Derek gave the police kept changing. First, he said he was trying to help me because he thought my car had a gas leak. Then he said I'd called him, sounding suicidal, and he was trying to stop me from hurting myself. Then he claimed I'd threatened to set his car on fire and he was acting in preemptive self-defense. None of it made sense. But with Harold Sutton's expensive legal maneuvering and my family's money backing him, Derek was out and awaiting trial. The local news picked up the story. "Twin brothers in alleged murder plot" read the headline. Derek gave an interview, tears streaming down his face, talking about how worried he'd been about me for years. How I'd struggled with mental health issues. How he'd only gone to that parking lot because I'd sent him desperate messages. I hadn't sent any messages. But Derek showed the reporter text that supposedly came from my number, asking him to meet me, saying I was going to hurt myself. I had no idea how he'd faked them. But the text looked real enough on screen. The comment section under the news article was brutal. People calling me an attention seeker, saying Derek was the real victim, that I was clearly disturbed and trying to destroy my family. Nobody believed me. Even with video evidence of Derek pouring gasoline, even with attempted murder charges, people still took his side. Jennifer Walsh filed an emergency motion to dissolve the restraining order my parents had against me. She argued that Derek had been the aggressor, that the original order was based on false information. She submitted all the medical evidence again, the timeline of neglect, the video footage from the parking lot. The hearing was scheduled in front of the same judge who'd granted the original restraining order. I sat at the defendant's table with Jennifer, while my parents sat on the other side with Harold Sutton. Derek wasn't there. He was under house arrest, electronic monitoring while awaiting trial. Harold Sutton argued that the parking lot incident was evidence of my instability, not Derek's. He claimed I'd manipulated Derek into coming to meet me, that I'd somehow staged the whole thing to frame him. He had expert witnesses ready to testify about how security footage could be misinterpreted. The judge looked skeptical of everyone. He postponed his decision, said he needed more time to review all the evidence. The restraining order would remain in place. I left the courthouse feeling defeated. Even with proof, even with video, Derek was still winning. Then things got worse. A week later, Jennifer called me. The security footage from the parking lot has been corrupted. The police evidence locker shows the file is damaged, unrecoverable. How is that possible? Someone tampered with it. Or paid someone to tamper with it. The backup files are gone too. Without the video, the case against Derek weakened significantly. It became my word against his again. The prosecutor was considering dropping the attempted murder charge down to harassment or disorderly conduct. Then Dr. Brennan called. I've received 3 formal complaints against my medical license. Anonymous complaints claiming I've been unprofessional in handling your case, that I've violated patient privacy, that I've falsified medical records. That's insane. You documented everything correctly. I know. But I have to defend myself now. My hospital has asked me to step back from your case until the complaints are resolved. I can't be an active witness anymore. Dr. Fitzgerald received similar complaints. He withdrew from the case entirely, citing concerns about his practice and reputation. One by one, the people who'd believed me were being silenced or intimidated. Derek's legal team was systematically destroying my support system. I was back in my car, having run out of money for the hotel. Jennifer was still fighting, but even she seemed overwhelmed by the opposition we were facing. The trial was set for 3 weeks away, and we were losing witnesses, losing evidence, losing ground. I stopped eating again, barely slept. My mind kept running through everything, trying to find some way to prove the truth. But Derek had thought of everything. Every piece of evidence I gathered, he found a way to undermine it. Every person who supported me either backed away or was discredited. One night, I parked near a bridge. I sat there for hours, staring at the water below, thinking about how much easier it would be to just end it. Derek had won. He'd always been going to win. The system believed him. The family believed him. The community believed him. I was alone, homeless, broke, and nobody cared about the truth. I had a bottle of sleeping pills in my glove compartment. I'd been prescribed them months ago for insomnia. I'd never taken them. But now I held the bottle, looking at it, thinking about how simple it would be. My phone rang. Unknown number. I almost didn't answer. Benson? A woman's voice. My name is Amanda Porter. I'm Derek's ex-girlfriend from college. I've been following the news about what's happening. I didn't say anything, just listened. Everything you're saying about Derek is true, she continued, her voice shaking. He did the same things to me. For 3 years, he manipulated me, isolated me from my friends, made everyone think I was the problem. When I finally left him, he started a smear campaign that destroyed my reputation at school. I had to transfer universities. Why are you calling me? Because I saved everything. Text messages, emails, recordings from when we were together. I have proof of what he is, how he manipulates people, the cruel things he said when he thought nobody else would find out. I should have come forward years ago. I'm sorry I didn't, but I'm ready now. I can testify. I can show the pattern. I started crying. Just broke down completely in my car. This stranger's voice on the phone, offering me the first real hope I'd had in months. Can you send everything to my lawyer? I asked, giving her Jennifer's contact information. I already did. 10 minutes ago. That's how I got your number. She gave it to me. We talked for another hour. Amanda told me about her relationship with Derek, and it was like hearing my own story reflected back. The way he'd isolated her, the way he'd turned people against her, the way he'd always stayed just subtle enough that nobody saw the abuse for what it was. He's dangerous, Amanda said. Not just to you, to everyone around him. And he'll keep doing this unless someone stops him. After the call ended, Jennifer called. I just spent 2 hours going through what Amanda sent. Benson, this is it. This is the evidence we needed. Text messages where Derek explicitly talks about manipulating you. Emails to Amanda where he describes his plan to make you look unstable. Recordings of him laughing about how easy it was to fool your parents. Can we use it in court? Absolutely. I'm filing amendments to our countersuit tomorrow. I'm also forwarding everything to the prosecutor. This changes the entire case. For the first time in months, I felt like I could breathe. Amanda's evidence showed a pattern going back years, showed premeditation, showed Derek's true nature in his own words. The trial was in 72 hours. We had 3 days to prepare with this new evidence. It was barely enough time, but it was all we had. I called Amanda back. "Thank you. You saved my life tonight. Literally. You're going to beat him," she said. "And when you do, he'll never be able to hurt anyone else again." I threw away the bottle of sleeping pills, made sure I ate something, found a rest stop where I could shower. I had 3 days to prepare for the most important fight of my life. Derek had been ahead of me for 26 years. But now, finally, I had ammunition he didn't know about, and I wasn't going to waste it. The courtroom was packed. News cameras filled the back row. My parents sat directly behind Derek and Harold Sutton. On my side, Jennifer Walsh sat at the defendant's table with boxes of evidence. Amanda Porter sat in the gallery behind us, ready to testify. The trial had been consolidated. Derek's criminal case for attempted murder, my parents' lawsuit against me for defamation, and my countersuit for medical neglect and abuse. One judge would hear everything and make rulings on all of it. The judge was different this time, a woman in her 50s named Judge Elizabeth Morrison. Jennifer said that was good. Judge Morrison had a reputation for being thorough and fair. Harold Sutton stood for his opening statement. He painted Derek as a devoted brother who'd spent his entire life trying to help his troubled twin. He described me as mentally unstable, prone to dramatic accusations, someone who'd turned against his family rather than accept responsibility for his own issues. He mentioned the security footage that had been corrupted and suggested I'd somehow destroyed it myself to frame Derek. When Jennifer stood for her opening statement, she took a different approach. She held up a timeline, large enough for the whole courtroom to see. "This is 26 years of systematic abuse," she said. "It starts when these boys were infants and continues to 3 weeks ago when Derek attempted to murder Benson in a parking lot. Every incident is documented. Every injury, every illness, every moment of neglect. And we have proof, not just of what was done to Benson, but of Derek's deliberate planning, his manipulation, his intent. The first witnesses were my parents. My mother took the stand, and Harold Sutton walked her through years of raising twins. She described me as a difficult child, said I'd always needed more attention than Derek, talked about sleepless nights worrying about my behavior. She cried on the stand, talking about how painful it was to be accused of neglect by her own son. Jennifer's cross-examination was surgical. "Mrs. Walker, when Benson broke his arm at age 14, how long did it take before he received medical treatment?" "I don't remember exactly. A few days, I think. The medical records show it was 72 hours. 3 full days with a broken arm. Why did you wait so long?" Derek said Benson was just bruised, that he was being dramatic. Derek was also 14. "Why would you take medical advice from a 14-year-old rather than examining your son yourself?" My mother didn't have a good answer. Jennifer went through incident after incident, each time showing the delay in treatment, each time showing that my parents had taken Derek's word over mine. The pattern became undeniable. My father testified next, and he was more defensive. He insisted they'd been good parents, that they'd done their best, that hindsight was 20/20, and maybe they should have acted faster sometimes, but that didn't make them abusive. Jennifer asked him about the night I stopped breathing. "You were downstairs when Benson collapsed in the bathroom. You could hear him. Why didn't you go check on him?" Derek said he was having another anxiety attack. We'd been through that before. "But he wasn't breathing. For 5 minutes, your son was dying upstairs, and you didn't check on him. We didn't know it was that serious. Why didn't you know? Why didn't you go see for yourself?" Again, no good answer. Derek testified after lunch. He was calm, composed, sympathetic. He described growing up with a brother who'd always needed extra help, talked about how worried he'd been over the years. When Harold Sutton asked about the parking lot incident, Derek's story was smooth. "Benson had texted me saying he was going to hurt himself. I was terrified. I drove to meet him, and when I got there, I saw gasoline on the ground. I thought he was trying to set himself on fire. I grabbed the container to move it away from his car. I was trying to help. It was a lie, but it sounded believable. Then Jennifer stood for cross-examination, and she held up her phone. Your Honor, I'd like to enter into evidence a series of text messages, emails, and audio recordings provided by a witness who will testify later today. Harold Sutton objected, but Judge Morrison allowed it. Jennifer connected her phone to the courtroom display, and suddenly Derek's messages filled the screen. The first text was from 6 years ago, Derek to Amanda. My parents give Benson too much attention. I need him out of the picture. If I can make them see him as the problem child, everything goes to me. Derek's face went pale. Jennifer showed message after message. Derek to Amanda, discussing how to manipulate situations to make me look bad. An email where Derek described putting crushed peanuts into my food to trigger my allergy. A voice recording where Derek laughed about how easily he'd fooled the CPS investigator. The courtroom erupted. Judge Morrison called for order. Harold Sutton demanded authentication. Jennifer had it. Forensic analysis from 2 independent firms. The messages were real, unaltered, undeniable. Mr. Walker, these messages seem to contradict your testimony, Jennifer said. In fact, they show years of premeditated abuse and manipulation. Would you like to revise your statement? Derek looked at Harold Sutton, panic in his eyes for the first time. Those are taken out of context, Derek said. Which part is out of context? The part where you talk about poisoning your brother? The part where you describe manipulating your parents? Or the part where you laugh about trying to kill him? Derek's composure cracked. He deserved it. He was always there, always taking what should have been mine. Our parents only have so much to give. I needed all of it. The courtroom went silent. Even Harold Sutton looked stunned. Are you confessing to abuse? Jennifer asked. I'm saying he made me do it. He wouldn't just go away. I tried everything. I isolated him. I ruined his relationships. I got him fired from jobs. And he still kept existing, kept causing problems. So yes, I put peanuts in his food. Yes, I poured gasoline around his car. Because he wouldn't stop ruining my life by being in it. Judge Morrison called for a recess. Court officers took Derek into custody immediately. His confession, given under oath, had just sealed his fate. When court reconvened 2 hours later, Amanda Porter testified. She described her relationship with Derek, provided context for the messages, explained how the manipulation worked. 3 of Derek's college friends testified next, all saying they'd heard Derek talk about destroying his brother's reputation. Finally, Dr. Brennan took the stand. Despite the complaints against her license, Judge Morrison allowed her testimony. She walked through the medical timeline, explaining each incident, each delay, each moment where my life had been put at risk. The trial lasted 3 more days, but the outcome was never in doubt after Derek's confession. Judge Morrison delivered her rulings on the final day. Derek was convicted of attempted murder and sentenced to 5 years in prison, with 3 years mandatory psychiatric treatment. The restraining order against me was dissolved. My parents' lawsuit was dismissed with prejudice, meaning they could never file it again. In my countersuit, Judge Morrison found my parents liable for medical neglect. She ordered them to pay restitution for medical bills, pain and suffering, and all my legal fees. The total came to $130,000. She also issued a blistering statement from the bench. This case represents a failure at every level. A failure of parenting, a failure of family, and initially, a failure of systems meant to protect vulnerable individuals. Mr. Derek Walker engaged in systematic abuse for over 2 decades, and his parents enabled it through willful blindness. While they may not have known the full extent of Derek's manipulation, they chose repeatedly to ignore clear signs that Benson needed help. That pattern of neglect nearly cost Benson his life multiple times. The news coverage after the trial was very different from before. Headlines read, "Golden Child revealed as abuser and twins' decades-long plot exposed." The community that had supported Derek turned against him. People who'd believed his lies apologized to me, though their apologies felt hollow. My extended family fractured. Aunt Carol and Uncle Raymond stopped speaking to my parents. My grandmother refused to admit she'd been wrong but did cut off contact with Derek. Other relatives reached out with awkward, guilt-laden messages. With the settlement money, I rented an apartment. Nothing fancy, just a one-bedroom in a safe neighborhood, but it was mine. I bought a real bed, real furniture. Started therapy 3 times a week to process everything that had happened. Dr. Brennan became a friend. The complaints against her license were withdrawn after Derek's conviction, and she made it her mission to educate other doctors about recognizing patterns of medical neglect. We met for coffee once a month, and she always asked how I was really doing, not just how I was seeming to do. Amanda and I stayed in touch. We formed a support group for survivors of family abuse, meeting weekly in a church basement. Hearing other people's stories, knowing I wasn't alone, helped more than anything else. I got a job at a medical supply company. My boss knew my story and hired me anyway. Said she respected my resilience. The work was simple but steady, and I was grateful for the routine. 6 months after the trial, Derek sent me a letter from prison. I almost threw it away without reading it, but Jennifer advised me to open it with her present. The letter was 3 pages of justifications and blame. Derek insisted I'd made him into what he became, that if I'd just been less present, less needy, less alive, none of this would have happened. There was no apology, no acceptance of responsibility, just anger that his plan had failed. I burned the letter in Jennifer's office fireplace and never looked back. My parents and I had no contact for almost a year. Then, on a warm spring day, I was sitting on a bench in the park reading when someone sat down nearby. I looked up, and it was my mother. She looked older than I remembered. Tired. There were new lines around her eyes. "Hello, Benson," she said quietly. "Mom." We sat in silence for a few minutes. Finally, she spoke. "I've been in therapy. Your father refused to go, so I left him. Filed for divorce 3 months ago. I needed to understand how I could have been so blind, how I could have failed you so completely. I didn't know what to say. I don't expect you to forgive me," she continued. "I don't deserve that. But I needed you to know that I finally see it. All of it. What Derek did. What we let him do. How we chose to believe his lies because it was easier than facing the truth." "Why was it easier?" I asked. She thought about that for a long time. "Because if Derek was the problem, we'd have to admit we raised a monster. But if you were the problem, we could fix it. Or at least, we could tell ourselves we were trying to fix it. We made you the scapegoat because it protected us from looking at our own failures." It was the most honest thing she'd ever said to me. "I'm glad you're in therapy," I said. "I hope it helps." "Can I ask you something?" she said. "Someday, maybe not now, maybe not for years, but someday, do you think we might be able to talk? Really talk?" I considered it. The anger I'd carried for so long had begun to fade, replaced by something more complicated. Not forgiveness. Not yet. Maybe never. But understanding, perhaps. An acknowledgement that people fail in complex ways, and healing is messier than punishment. "Maybe," I said. "But not yet. I need more time." She was right. But I also knew that Derek's arrest was just the beginning. My parents would bail him out. Harold Sutton would build a defense. The family would close ranks. This fight was far from over. She walked away, and I watched her go. I felt something I hadn't expected. Not peace exactly, but a lessening of pain. An opening where there had only been wounds before. I thought about everything that had happened. The years of being dismissed and ignored. The near-death experiences. The homelessness and desperation. The moments when I'd wanted to give up, but I'd survived. Against all odds. Against a system that initially didn't believe me. Against a brother who'd planned my destruction since childhood. I'd survived. And more than that, I'd fought back. I'd found people who believed me. I'd gathered evidence. I'd refused to let Derek's narrative become the only truth. It had taken everything I had, but I'd won. There's a lesson in that, I think. Sometimes the people who are supposed to protect you are the ones you need protection from. Sometimes families fail so completely that leaving them becomes survival. But your truth matters. Your pain is real. Your life has value. Even when everyone around you says otherwise. If you're living through something like what I experienced, know this. It's not your fault. The manipulation, the gaslighting, the systematic destruction of your credibility, none of that is on you. And if you're ready to fight back, to tell your truth even when no one wants to hear it. You are stronger than you know. It might take time. It might take everything you have. You might lose people you love. You might spend nights in your car wondering if it's worth it. But you are worth fighting for. Your story deserves to be heard. And eventually, if you keep pushing, if you keep gathering proof, if you refuse to be silenced, the truth comes out. I stood up from the bench and started walking toward home. My phone rang. It was Jennifer, with news that Derek's request for early parole had been denied. Justice was holding. The system had finally worked. The sun was setting, painting the sky in shades of orange and pink. I'd survived the darkness. Now I was learning to live in the light. I was the spare, the backup, the forgotten twin. Derek had tried to erase me, and he'd almost succeeded. But I'm still here. Scarred, but alive. Damaged, but healing. And for the first time in 26 years, I'm learning what it means to be free. If you've experienced something similar, whether it's a sibling, a parent, or anyone else who tried to make you disappear, I want you to know you're not alone. Your pain is valid. Your survival matters. And your future is yours to create, no matter what they took from the past. Has anyone in your life ever made you question your own reality? Have you experienced being the scapegoat while someone else played the golden child? I'd love to hear your thoughts in the comments. And if this story resonated with you, please consider hitting that like button and subscribing. Share this with someone who might need to hear it. Sometimes knowing you're not alone makes all the difference. Thank you for listening to my story. I hope wherever you are, whatever you're facing, you find the strength to fight for your truth. You deserve that. You deserve so much more than what they told you. Take care of yourselves out there. And remember, surviving is just the first step. Living, really living, comes next.